I'm Microsoft MVP, Tom Morgan. In this series of videos, we're going to talk all about how to build declarative agents with API plugins for Microsoft Copilot. In this video, we're going to talk about what they are, how they fit in with the other technologies in Microsoft 365 and Copilot, and we're going to compare them to ChatGPT, and we're also going to look at some use cases. Okay, let's start at the very beginning. What are we talking about? Because it's quite a mouthful, isn't it? Declarative agents with API plugins for Microsoft Copilot. Let's take that title and just break things down a little bit. So first of all, Microsoft Copilot. We're talking about AI for Microsoft Copilot. This is AI, but it's only just the Microsoft 365 stuff. It's not ChatGPT. It's not OpenAI. It's not anything else you've heard from anyone else. We're purely talking about Copilot, and we're building on top of Copilot. So all the things that we're going to talk about broadly are things that you do inside the Microsoft 365 experience. And that's important for things like security, compliance, keeping IT admins happy. That's where we're going to start. Everything here is all Copilot. Now, the next bit, declarative agents. What do we mean by declarative agents? Okay. Agents, let's start there. What is an agent? Okay, so we've got Copilot. We know what that means. We have that ability in Microsoft 365 to have a chat experience, ask questions, and look at our data in different ways. And that Copilot chat that we have has access to all of our organizational data, and that can be really, really valuable. An agent is like a really specialized experience. It's comparing it to, let's say, a normal Copilot chat that you might have, which looks across your entire organization. An agent can be much more specialized in two really key areas. It's specialized in the information it has access to, and it's specialized in how it behaves. Think of it a little bit like a mobile phone. Okay, so you've got a mobile phone, and it might have a voice assistant on it. It might be Siri, it might be Google Voice, it might be something else. And you can talk to that, and you can ask it anything you want, and you'll get an answer. And sometimes the answers are good, and sometimes they're a bit vague, and they're not super specialized. But then you have apps for your phone, right? And apps are really specialized, and you find the app that works really well for you and gives you the information you need. And you go to that app if you need something, and you're going to a really specialized experience. It's a little bit like that, where agents are this specialized experience that you choose to go to because you deliberately want to just work in a very specific problem domain. So let's draw this box, because this box is our Microsoft 365 experience. And we're saying that everything we're doing with Microsoft Copilot lives inside that Microsoft 365 experience. We've got Copilot Chat, okay, which is our sort of standard, access it in Teams, you access it, the Office 365 app as well online, increasingly coming to more and more places. But then we also have these specialized agents that we can choose to talk to. So these agents kind of live on the side, and I'm going to put them like this because they do use the chat experience. They use the same UI for chat. When you're talking to them, it's still a conversational to and fro. And there's some interesting interplay as well between what can happen in chat and what can happen with agents. But fundamentally, as a user, you're making a decision to go from I'm just talking with the Copilot chat to now I'm talking to an agent. And that's an important distinction because the user is then leaning in to have that conversation. Now, this is a big simplification. There are times when the orchestrator in the chat can decide to invoke an agent because it thinks it's the right thing to do. But for the moment, let's just think about users choosing to invoke agents when they think it's a good idea. And that's why when you look at the Microsoft 365 Copilot chat experience, you'll see there's a section at the top for different agents, for invoking different agents. And there are some that are already built in. Microsoft provides some, but you can also add your own. And that's what we're talking about here, adding your own. They're called declarative agents because you are kind of declaring their specialism, if you like. They're agents that live on top. So that's broadly what they are and how they fit in to the wider ecosystem. It's important to note as well, there are a couple of things that live still within Microsoft 365 that are separate to this. So if you hear about custom engine agents, I'm going to draw like a line. They're slightly different. Custom engine agents, they are built with the Teams AI library. They're a slightly different thing. They don't interact with Copilot chat quite so much. They give developers a lot more freedom. We'll talk about those in a separate video, but they're kind of out of scope for this video and its series. The other thing is you can build your agents either with code or in Copilot Studio. There's two different ways of doing it. We're not going to talk about Copilot Studio so much in this series. We might do it in a different one actually, but for now we're going to talk about how to use pro-code tools such as Visual Studio Code to build up your declarative agents yourself without using Copilot Studio. Okay, so I'm going to keep those in the Microsoft 365 bubble, but they are kind of separate things. So you've got Teams AI library. So if you hear the Teams AI library being talked about, it's still an experience that allows you to create a chatbot that is backed with AI. Gives you a lot more flexibility. You can reach out to Azure OpenAI. You can bring your own models. You can do a lot more, but it's a bit more sort of set up and work. And then you've also got Copilot Studio, which is the low-code approach to building these same agents. And it's got its pros and cons as well, but we're not going to talk about it as part of this video. We've talked about what declarative agents are. We've talked about what Microsoft Copilot is. What we haven't talked about is this API plugin section. And this for me is the really interesting part about building these declarative agents. So you can build a declarative agent without an API plugin. And what that means is you're building an agent where you get to define its experience, how it acts, its instruction set, what it does, how it should behave. And you get to give it essentially system prompts before it gets to the user for an experience. And that's great. The other thing you can do if you're building declarative agents in something like Copilot Studio, you can point at a SharePoint site, some folders, other documents, and you can create an agent there. So and again, you also can specify instruction and behavior. So you're still controlling those two key important things that drive an agent and makes it different. You're controlling the source of information and you're controlling the behavior. Where the declarative agents differ with the API plugin model is rather than just pointing to a static body of data, you can point to APIs. So you can literally define APIs that your agent is allowed to call as part of its processing. So if you think about that, that gets really powerful because you can tee up more than one API, a bunch of APIs, define their behavior and how they work, and then you can say to Copilot or your agent, call these APIs when it makes sense. The way this works, if you think about your agent here, and inside your agent, you've got a couple of different things. You've got a manifest file. The manifest file describes your agent and how it works, and it can contain references to one or more API schemas. Now, the schema model used is OpenAPI, which is a standard for defining APIs. If you haven't heard of it, go look around. If you've done anything with Swagger, they're actually OpenAPI files, that schema. So you need some OpenAPI. We're going to cover all of that in another video. So don't worry about it. Just be aware that there's a file that defines how your API gets called, like the methods in it, the parameters it takes, and all the rest of it. So you have those OpenAPI schemas. So let's put that down. OpenAPI schema. And then you have an instructions document. And the instructions document is basically your system prompt, if you know what that is. It's a set of instructions that you give to your bot, you give to your agent that defines how it's going to work, what it should do, what its purpose in life is, the types of questions it should answer, and crucially, when it should go to the different APIs that you've referenced to get this stuff done. So if you were building, I don't know, let's say a leave booking form for booking annual leave, you might have an API that you can call to go and get how many days leave you have. And then you could also, this is really important, you could put a request or post a request to actually book some new leave. Now you could tell both of those things to the agent and tell it that's what the API is for. And then in the instructions, tell it that it's an agent that manages bookings, annual leave bookings. That way, if I was to start a conversation with the agent and say, how many days holiday do I have? It knows which API to call and it knows which method to call. It can take the result back, format it nicely and give it back to me. That's the real power. These APIs, they kind of allow agents to become really useful without developers investing loads and loads of time in building all the UIs for users to use, because all they need to do is define the APIs and the methods that are available, and then the agent can do the rest with the conversation it has with the user. So a common question that comes up about now is, isn't this just the same as GPT actions, which are a thing that exists outside of Microsoft 365 with ChatGPT? Very, very similar model. And yes, they are the same kind of thing. But the key difference is that you're using Copilot as the orchestrator to decide when to call out to those agents and that same user interface for when to invoke the agents. So there's a couple of reasons you might want to do this and use Copilot for your kind of next solution. First one for me is the user friendliness, because Copilot agents are there right in the user's flow of work. So it's where they're doing all their things. It's where they're having their conversations with Copilot already. The agents are just a click away. So a declarative agent, when you use it as well, is going to look and feel just like the rest of the interaction users are having with Copilot. So it kind of feels like users are much more likely to engage with it and not be frightened off by it, which I think is a really big deal right now with AI. You really want to get those confidence levels up, and I think it really helps to do that. The other thing, there's no additional kind of charges for once you're using agents on top of something like Copilot. There's a couple of caveats to that if you're using Copilot Studio, but in all the things we're going through today and in this video series, there's no additional costs. You don't need to, for instance, maintain a subscription to an external service like ChatGPT. It also means that all the data within these agents is staying within Microsoft 365. So if you're building enterprise agents, that's really important. The other thing is that your declarative agent can have some access to Microsoft 365 data, just like Copilot Chat, meaning you can combine data from Microsoft 365 and an external API. So that stuff gets really powerful really quickly. And you can also lean on some of the other built-in tools such as image generation and code generation and stuff like that. So a couple of reasons there why you might want to use Copilot actions instead of GPT actions. Now, you've probably already got loads of things in your head where you think this would be really, really useful and could be game-changing. If you haven't, just have a think about anything you've got that's got a back-end API. You might have some legacy systems, some old enterprise apps, and line of business apps, things like that. They've got an API. Go and have a look and see if they've got a good back-end API, because anything that does, if you can expose that API and get a schema written for it, and we're going to talk about how you write schemas for APIs where you don't have one already. I'm going to talk about that in another video. But maybe all it does is it removes that horrible user interface that users really complain about all the time because it's 20 years old and you don't want to write a new one. Copilot Chat, that kind of agent chat, if you like, can make that really, can bring it into the 21st century, really, with the APIs behind it, and let users get to where they need to go really quickly. And you might find as well that actually for lots of use cases, that chat with an agent is the only interface that people need. Also have a look at any middleware and things that you're doing. Anything that requires intervention, requires an approval process, could be a really good candidate for this. It's those kind of business flows, understanding the business flows in your organization and where the bottlenecks are, and where a little bit of automation or just being able to just quickly have a chat and then fire off an API call on the basis of that could really speed some things up. It's really, really interesting. All these places where, otherwise you would have to put in a big UI and therefore you haven't done it because it's painful. These declarative agents can be really good at collecting large amounts of information, processing it, and then calling those APIs that are needed. This has been our introduction video to building declarative agents with API plugins for Microsoft Copilot. Hopefully you now know what all those words mean. In the next video, we're going to look at prerequisites. So how do you get your machine in order before you start? All the things you need so you're ready to go. And then after that, future videos, we're going to show you a cool demo and then show you how to build that cool demo. Thanks for watching.